Okay, welcome everyone to the Finance Audit and Tendering Committee meeting. We'll call the meeting to order. Is there any conflicts of interest? Seeing none. Okay. Before we approve the agenda, the 5B, there were some pending resolutions that were there. They've now been looked at by staff, so there's a recommendation, so we can add them into 5A if the committee's okay with that.
Okay. Those are the ones that passed out this morning, I think, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So just approval of the agenda. It's moved and second. Thank you. Adoption of the minutes from our last meeting on May 4th. They're attached, moved and seconded. Thank you very much. So we get right into tenders. The first one is the St. Peter's Road Belvedere Roundabout. So if Nancy, if you want to.
Sure. So the tender went out for the St. Peter's Road and Belvedere Avenue Roundabout. There was one submission, and it was from Island Postal Services. The amount of the submission was $5.754 million, plus all applicable taxes. So the recommendation is that this be accepted. Now that said, the budget for Public Works for this project was $3.6 million, and utility had a $1.5 million budgeted amount. So that leaves a shortfall of $1.5 million. So what Public Works and what we're suggesting is that the additional $1.5 million will come from existing accounts within the Public Works budget, and those will be determined by the Public Works manager. And a budget transfer will be forthcoming in the coming weeks. The other part of this is we will be using 1.5 of gas tax funding to cover off this, but that will be reflected in the Public Works portion.
Councillor Ramsey.
Thank you for that, Nancy. As you know, we all were getting emails, and I know this is time sensitive, but I'm just wondering about bike paths and everything that we've been getting in the last 2 or 3 days. And is this going to be still move forward as the whole design is not approved yet?
I'm sorry.
Like the whole designs are really not approved, because we've been receiving emails, I have been anyway, about a bike path and so on and so forth out there for the safety of the people walking and riding their bikes. And with the whole design, I'm just wondering, like, maybe this should be brought up at Public Works, but it hasn't been sort of finalized yet.
I am not aware of that issue, but we can put in a call to Scott Adams to have him. He just sent this a couple of days ago, so I assume that we're fine with those concerns. However, we can certainly follow up with him prior to this going to council on Monday evening.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Rivard.
Thanks, Chair. So I guess my question, Nancy, to you, the $1.5 million shortage. I know you had mentioned that the manager of Public Works is going to transfer some funds within the account sometime during the year. I'd really like to know where that's coming from myself personally, just because, again, $1.5 million already off the, we heard the chair of the committee talk about how tight their budget was to begin with during the budget season. To cut $1.5 million off a tight budget already, I'm fearful that, we're cutting a service or services for the residents. Just want to make sure kind of what services we are thinking of cutting prior to doing so. That way we're aware as councillors too, in case we get the phone calls.
So again, I can have Scott follow up. I think it was the just trying to get this, moving along. So I can, certainly follow up with Scott to see where he plans on getting these funds. We do know, just as a general comment, the same as last year and, well, particularly last year, in that the rising costs kind of precluded us from doing many projects. And this, as we can tell, this is over budget, over what we budgeted because of fuel and materials and so on. So from Scott's perspective, what he would need to do, as you said, go through and, we know there's projects that aren't going to be done, probably. That's a great probability of that. So he will determine which of those projects.
Yeah, thank you, Nancy. And again, it's the projects that are being cut again, and services maybe that are going to be affected by this that impact the city, because the residents, based on the budget and everything that's been passed so far, there's an expectation that certain things are going to be done or tried to, and with gas prices continuing to go up and everything else, we're already probably looking at shortages, unless we get some kind of, I'll say, some kind of package from somewhere, kind of relieving us some of the stress. But then, like I said, an additional $1.5 million. I'm not saying that the project isn't great. I'm not saying that we don't want to go, and this is unexpected, and I appreciate all that. It's just when it comes to the $1.5 million, I'd love to know what's going to be shaved off, and I think council should know prior to the staff making that cut, without council knowing what's being cut. Because again, when we approved the budget, we approved it based on what we saw as a council, and I think that's kind of prudent to do that. So,
Fair enough.
Mr. Chair, I agree with Councillor Rivard there, but I think we knew this was coming because it's been coming at us a lot during the COVID epidemic. So we're not free of the epidemic, so the prices seem to increase. So we should be, maybe we should be benefiting in the very, very near future. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair? Just what we will try and have for you on the council package on Monday night is the possible accounts where this money could be taken from. We believe that I am aware of this project, and I believe that we will be able to find it within the existing capital budget. Number one. And number two, with respect to the bike routes, I understand that you have had a number of issues, a number of emails on those. And I think I think that we have responded previously that it is difficult to put bike routes in areas in roundabouts, but that we will be seen to make upping the safety of the crossing crosswalks and see what we can do in that area.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so with all that information, is the committee okay with this resolution going to the council? Okay, great, thanks. So the next one is sidewalk construction, which is the next one in your package here. If there's any questions or comments, the sidewalks are identified there with the cost. If there's Councillor Rivard.
yeah, again, assuming this is all within the budget amount and the capital budget that we approved, just to make sure. Like I said, I think I have a sneaky suspicion that as we go through the tendering process for anything this year, with respect to everything, I guess prices of everything going up quite a bit, that we're going to be faced with this almost every tender where it could possibly be over. So I'm hoping that this one is within the budget amount, or
Well, yes and no. It is within the budget amount for sidewalk construction as a whole. Both of these are over the original budget amount that they have been allocated for the capital budget. So the recommendation is, when we look at Lincoln Street, Centennial Drive, the Sandstone Drive and Grafton Street, they are looking at deferring those and reallocating some of the funds for those to cover off the Lincoln and Centennial.
Okay, are we okay with the sidewalk? Okay, that's great. We'll move that one along. The next one is street resurfacing with the report attached. If there's any questions or comments on that resolution from Public Works.
If I may make a comment, it's regarding it being over budget again also. So what we're doing is we're moving our gas tax, which there is a presentation on coming up, the allocation of our gas tax. So part of this is reallocating $500,000 of our gas tax to cover off the street surfacing under this project.
Mr. Chair? Just as we keep sort of dipping into the gas tax pot, how much is in the the gas tax pot, I guess, is what my question is, because if we're taking 1.5 for one thing and then 500,000 for another, I'm just wondering, like, is there a cap on that? Like, is there 5.2 million there? Maybe Nancy's gonna sort of explain that to us later, as she said, but I'm just wondering.
Yes, there is plenty of funds there. And we will be, the gas tax program actually wraps up, well, this phase of it anyway, and who knows what the future will bring, but wraps up in 23-24 fiscal year. So what that means is all the funding we have and what we are expecting to receive has been allocated out by Paul Johnson and agreed upon as a management team and CAO. So he'll be doing a presentation on that later in the open session.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. Again, I'm seeing a theme in these tenders, and again, no fault of anybody's. Is there any way, Donna, that we can do a list of capital projects that we are hoping to do in 2022 from, I'll say, priority number one to the least, needed thing for the city, and kind of prioritize that and say, based on the rising costs of everything, we're not going to be able to do all this work. We're looking at shaving off, 17, 18, and 19, let's say. From the list, but the top 17 are still a priority to the city at this point. Is there something that we can do like that gives kind of council and the residents an idea of maybe what to expect?
Yes, there is, and I'm very pleased to be able to say that. we have that kind of. I'm not sure that prioritization. If you did that during the budget, I'm not sure if you did that or not. But what we do have a list. We have a very nice spreadsheet, which I was really pleased to see, and we will. Maybe we'll bring that back to another committee meeting of yours rather than try to do it in the open session, or rather than try to do it at council, and then we can report to council on it. But at this point in time, we do have the list. We can, if you would like, set up what we think the priorities are, and then you guys can either agree or disagree. And I mean, right now, the way we're going, the priorities are being, because we've already spent money on this and money on that, obviously those will be the priorities and the ones that are out for tender. So yes, we can do that, and I think that's being done to make sure that there is enough money at the end.
Thanks, Donna. And I guess I remember seeing through the budget process that each department had prioritized certain items, but I'm thinking that now that the whole capital budget's done, it'd be great to see all the projects, in one spreadsheet to say, it's not a public work versus park and rec. It's just that these are the main priorities of initiatives for this year. And I'd love to see the total in a package versus just department by department. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think we can do that.
Okay, no, that's great, Councilor Rivard. So are we okay with the street resurface? Okay, so we'll move that on to council as well. Next resolution before us is the traffic control signs and posts, and again, it's in our package, and there's a report on the back. If there's any questions or comments, we have Nancy here. That's great. We'll move that one along. Next one we see is the backhoe hire rate. This is for the utility. I think we already did one for Public Works a little while back. So this is the utility one, and again, there's a report there from the utility. If there's any questions or comments. Okay, that's great. Thank you. Move on to the grass cutting resolution. Again, that's coming from the utility department. No issues? Yeah, pretty straightforward. Okay, great. Next one's the irrigation system from Parks and Rec out at the soccer complex in Winslow. There's a write-up there from the Parks Department if there's any questions or comments on that one. Okay. No, that's great. Thank you. Next one is the Simmons, the pre-engineering, the steel that we're ordering that we talked about. If there's any questions or comments from the report that was provided to us. Okay, that's great. Next item before us is the water and sewer fee structure. They're looking to pass a resolution there Monday for any comments or questions on that spreadsheet that's in our package. No. Okay. It certainly helps when we have members of this committee that sit on other committees, so you kind of have the background, right? It makes things a lot smoother for sure. The next one before us is the bucket truck that's been reviewed, and now that's one of the ones that we added in because it's here. We were able to kind of review it. If there's any questions or comments on that item. No? Okay. That's great. The asphalt testing services. Again, the report is provided there for us. If there's any comments regarding that. Okay. And we have the Fitzroy Parkade facade improvements. Again, the report's attached there for us to review. Councillor Ramsey.
I sit on Public Works too, Mr. Chair, too. What are we looking, this has been going on for years, like facade, is that to sort of dress it up, or what is the whole situation on that? Like, why is it $509,000?
I can speak to that back from my planning days because I was chair of planning at the time. So again, the parkade was, as you know, was extended out. It had a facade at the time that was deep in. They had to remove that. So right now it just consists of, basically a raw concrete looking structure. And under the design review through Heritage, they had to dress it up to standards that the city has in the downtown core. And that's why we had to go through the process design review. Came back, this was the cost to put a facade on that was acceptable by the Heritage and Design Review Committee, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's been around the block, literally. It's expensive too, but, you know, that type of work is expensive, so you gotta grin and bear it, $500,000, and he'll quiet our mayor down, he brings it up every Public Works meeting, so that's one advantage. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, no, that's great. So we can move that one along. Next one before us is the engineering services for the stormwater data collection.
Do we miss the towing services at the top?
That one didn't close yet,
Okay.
Councillor Duffy. So I think we'll probably see that one next month. If
Yep.
okay, yeah, no, good point though. Sorry, I should have mentioned that. Yeah, so I guess the next one before us here is the stormwater data collection. If there's any questions or comments on that one. Okay, that's great. So I guess that concludes the resolution part that will be moved on to council. We could move into to number 6, the discussion item on the change order. If maybe Nancy, you want to take that? Thanks.
This has to do with the electronic buses. So, and the change order is to cover the scope changes in the electric transit facility that we will be discussing in the closed session. So the operational budget had reflected $200,000 for a consultant for this project, and the cost was shared 75, 15, 10% between Charlottetown, Stratford, and Cornwall, respectively. So there was also a $20,000 contingency built into that. So we're just, because of the change of scope, we are just over the usage of that $20,000 contingency. So there will be a change. There's a request for a change order for the original PO. Keep in mind that no one's asking for any additional funds. This is still within the scope of the total budgeted amount. It's more a change in an addition of $22,500 to the PO for Wood Environment and Infrastructure Solutions.
Okay, thanks, Nancy. If there's any questions or comments regarding that request. No, looks like the committee's okay. All right. We can move on to the next discussion items, which is the gas tax, which we alluded to earlier. Ms. Councillor Ramsey brought that up. So we have Paul Johnson here. He's going to provide an overview of the gas tax.
Chair, committee members, thank you. Yes, Tamara's going to bring up a file for us there. Thank you, Tamara. Gas tax funding is now called the Canadian Community Building Fund, CCBF. I'm going to try and move myself into the current terminology there, but same thing, CCBF gas tax. There's a direct allocation portion of it that I became understanding of in my Public Works Manager days, carrying it forward, working cooperatively with Finance Manager, CAO, managers, Public Works and Water and Sewer and some other departments as we need to. This funding has a direct allocation portion, which is just money to the city without application. We do have to spend it on appropriate projects. We do have to have a spending plan in place. We do have to annually report what we have spent. Our last spending plan was done in 2019. It is appropriate and necessary that we update this, and that is what we're going to explain to you today. And part of the reason we need to update this is our city budget had Victoria Park Shoreline Protection as CCBF funded. We need to find out how we're getting that money in there so that we can make application for the project, so that we can be approved, so that we can go to tender on it. Also, I'm hearing your previous portion of the meeting. There's a couple of other administrative recommendations on changes in the gas tax spending to follow up on the comments or the actualities of tenders coming in over budget. So, in front of you, if I can make this thing work, yeah. Worked for me yesterday, I may have to stand up. We have our spending plan. Across the top is the money the city receives, about $3.3 to $3.6 million annually. There's been a couple of years where the feds have doubled that up. If we don't spend it, we have some interest, and carried over from the previous 5 years, we had $2.8 million. All told, within this 5 years, we'll have about $26.8 million to spend. And what we're proposing is that full expenditure to bring us to zero at the end of the 5-year period. Basically, years 1 through 3 are already done and in the books. We have our 4th year, which we have a city budget resolution on, and then some remaining funds that we could spend next year. To look at this year's funding, on the street resurfacing, you will see that our city budget said $1.5 million. We're popping that up to $2 million to address the tenders which have come in and the inflationary costs that we're currently seeing. Basically, we're just taking that money from the future year, which still has $2.25 million to spend in resurfacing, which staff feel is appropriate. To move down to the Victoria Park shoreline, our city budget had $900,000 in there, fully funded through this program. We've bumped that up by 20%, anticipating the tenders may come in over that price. We're taking the money from elsewhere within the program this year and future years, but we still feel we've got an appropriate program we're putting forward here. Our city budget had $500,000 in a couple of lines for the water and sewer department, booster stations and lift station upgrades. That remains. And we had some funding in there for street rehabilitation projects. We have upped that by $1.5 million. In that the utility department was doing $1.5 million work without funding. We're now saying, let's put our funding towards that so that we can get it spent within the next 2 years, hopefully, and bring our program down to zero. It still leaves, as we say, in that final year of the program, appropriate funding to levels that are consistent with pretty well what we've been doing. This is the staff recommendation, and open to any questions about it. And hopefully we can forward this to council and get this as a resolution of our new spending plan and move forward with these projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. We'll just open it up to any questions or comments from the committee.
Thank you for that, Paul. So it's a 5-year program, you're saying in 2022, 2023 would be the last year? And then it starts again? Is that how this works?
Yes, it's been been in 5-year segments. This is the second, I think, 5-year segment they've done, and we anticipate that there would be an announcement nearing the end of that where they would say for 2024, 25, and the next 4 years, here's the funding that's going out to all these municipalities in Canada. We would then put forward another 5-year program in front of us.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments regarding this item? No? Okay.
Mr. Chair, just a note that we are asking for a recommendation from the Finance Committee for this to move to council.
Okay, so we have it moved by Councillor Ramsey and second by Councillor Duffy that we can forward this item on to council. Okay. No, that's great. Thanks again, Paul, very much.
Thank you, Paul.
Next, next item up for discussion, enterprise contract. I don't know if Nancy, you're leading that one?
So we've revisited this several times. So what we have a different approach this time. We do understand that the information that council, the committee and council has been provided has been quite fragmented over a series of months. And, you know, sometimes that was in response to questions from associations or whatever. So what we've done in finance is that we've, my directive was to the authors of this report, who had the most input when it initially began, was Stephen Wedlock and Stephen McFadgen. On the request of our CAO, she wanted a report. So my advice to these two staff members was to prepare this report as if the Finance Committee had never seen anything about the enterprise contract. So take all the information we have received over the last year, really, or more, and compile it into a very factual, objective report. So this is what you have before you. It starts with the procurement process through the FCM and how that ties in with our procurement or is acceptable under our procurement policy. It then goes on to list the, just in the verbiage part, it then goes on to list the benefits of this program, because it is a program, and I think that's really important. There's more factors to it than just going to a dealership and purchasing a vehicle. There's many peripheral advantages, and you can read about those in this in the verbiage of this report. The other thing we did is there's an analysis, and if you flip through, you will come upon a spreadsheet there that says Enterprise Fleet Management Appendix C. So what we've done is is everyone there? I'd just like to briefly go through this, Mr. Chair, if that's okay. We are actually on the third last page, I believe.
Appendix C, is it?
Yes, it says appendix. Oh, no, it is the last page. I'm sorry. I have 2 additional pages. Sorry. So if we look at this and just to very quickly go through it, and then we can open up to questions. So our current fleet, we have 61 vehicles in our current fleet. Our current cycle, meaning the amount of time that we own these, is 12.71 years, which is a massive amount of time to own these. And so with that comes increased maintenance. So our maintenance on these is on average $150 a month for each of these vehicles. And also our maintenance cost per kilometer is about 13 cents. So What we're proposing is we still hold our fleet number, a status quo at 61. However, with this contract, we are going to cycle them out much quicker in 2.43 years. So that, right off the top, that reduces our maintenance costs to about $56. A lot of reasons for that is because they're new, they're under warranty, and so on. And obviously, less wear and tear, so by extension, less maintenance expense. So those are kind of the highlights of the spreadsheet. And then if we move down to the table, we can see that on average, this is how it's been. We have 61 in our fleet, and typically we need 4.8 new vehicles a year. And these are owned by the city. So 61 of them out of 61 are owned. To purchase these, on average, is about $158,000. And when we go to sell them, our equity in them, which is typically referred to in accounting terms salvage value, is $9,600, which is really minimal. Our maintenance costs on average have been almost $110,000, and so that brings our fleet cost to about $260,000. So with the introduction of this contract, which I must add can be canceled at any time. So for 21, let's look at that. The average, we're still maintaining the status quo of 61. We are planning on purchasing 69 vehicles. So that means we will have 69 leased, I'm so sorry, 29 vehicles, 29 leased and 32 owned. That'll be the blend of our fleet. The leasing cost for those 29 is approximately $190,000, and the equity of our owned vehicles, which refers to the 32 that we own. We got two things going on now while we phase out our own fleet, our prior fleet. So we have equity owned and we have equity leased. So the equity owned is the old fleet that we are transitioning out. And as you can see, the equity leased is $76,000. However, that will increase just as the equity owned will decrease as we transition into this program, if that is council's decision. So we can also see a decrease in our maintenance costs as we travel down the next 10 years of that column. Consequently, our fleet costs, and so that brings us to our annual savings. So when this was first done with Enterprise, you probably saw a very similar table before, and their savings were 1.8. We have modified that because they had factored in fuel, but back then in early 2021, it was okay to estimate fuel in analysis at $1 a liter. So clearly that is just a hope and a dream now. So we've eliminated the fuel cost because it is so volatile and so wide-ranging that we felt it was not within the integrity of our whole report. So what I would have to say is that with this program, with new vehicles, we do know that that the maintenance costs will drop considerably, but also so will fuel, just because we are dealing with newer vehicles. And they are obviously making them far more energy efficient and so on. So the fuel, so if you get, think back to what you've seen before, yes, there is a $300,000 difference. So basically what you can kind of extrapolate from that is that using $1 a liter, if we were to use $1 a liter for the cost of fuel, we would save $300,000 in fuel costs alone over the next 10 years. But of course, that's a a volatile number. So, but that if all things had remained the same as they were back in February, that could be our expectation. So a couple of things that were concerning to council and the committee was the fact that these vehicles were, there was nothing in the official contract that said Enterprise had to purchase these vehicles from local dealerships, or nor did it specifically directly address the fact that our maintenance on these vehicles will be done at local dealerships. To address that, we need to understand that Enterprise makes recommendations to us as to when to sell a vehicle, when to buy a vehicle, but also they will recommend where we buy these vehicles or where we get them repaired. But it is entirely up to the city, where we don't have to agree with their recommendation. So it's entirely up to the city where we take our vehicles and where we buy them from. Does anyone have questions?
I do, yes. Thank you, Nancy, for that, for explaining it all. And as among other things, we've been going at this for a year. The savings is great, and I'm really impressed with it. One question that was brought up by other councillors and myself: how come we are the only city that is involved in this, like around the Maritimes or things? We've been asking that question, and I don't think we ever got an answer. But if it's such a fantastic deal, and it looks good with the savings 1.5 after 10 years, why is there not other cities sort of jumping at this project?
I can't really speak to what other cities may or not be jumping to this, because I truly don't know, but we can certainly find out. Oh, sorry. B, when you look at, I'm going to change my B and then move on to C. B, we don't know how much attention, we get information coming in all the time, invitations for this, invitations for that. Now, fortunately, our team kind of focused in on this, so it could just be it got lost in the shuffle. I don't know. Again, I'm speculating. And thirdly, it took the city of Charlottetown a very long time, and we're still going through this process. But it took the city a very long time to sign this agreement, which, at the desire of council, may be rescinded. So we don't know whether other cities are going through that long, drawn-out process either. And again, pure speculation on my part. But that would be my answer.
Yes, and I agree with you too. And I was just wondering, it looks very good, your savings every year, like 235, 190, 88 and all that. It's great for the taxpayers of the city to have this program. And the thing is that it's an open contract, which was why I was impressed with it, that we can walk away, I believe, after 30 days. If things don't work out in both parties, on both sides of the parties. So that was the thing that sort of sold me on that. I'm sorry. And the whole thing too is that you're not tied in for a year, 6 years, or 3 years, or something on that line. Like, we have that option of sort of moving away from it.
We
Thank you.
absolutely do. However, I should note that, if we've already entered into a cycle of vehicles, the true end of the contract would not end until we sold those.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the answer to Councillor Ramsey's question is right at this top paragraph on page number 1, where it says on November the 2nd of 2020, the city was approached by a representative from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities about an offer to take advantage of fleet management services through a national procurement program offered by Sourcewell. So it's only, the program's only been administered through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities for a year and a half. So they were probably the city of Charlottetown was probably the first representative approach. So it's not, and I understand, Councillor Ramsey, that the question has come up a lot over the last year and a half without really an answer given. So I think that covers that off. Okay. And by the way, Mr. Chair, while I'm on the mic, I'd like to thank Nancy for this report. As she has noted, this has been going on for a year and a half within this building, and there's been rumors, there's been stories, there's been anecdotes, there's been, you name it, we've heard it, and 50% of them are true. And and part of this education program that we have is this 2-page report. So it's made everything crystal clear, and it should help us get to where we want to go. I don't know how to handle this, really, to tell you the truth. There's some tremendous savings with this program. We were guaranteed $189 savings back at the beginning, and to this date we're at $266,000. And one of our city solicitors pointed out about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago, that there were some glitches in the service area, that in the service departments where the service was done. But, if it was your own vehicle and you're dealing with a local gas station or a tire outlet or whatever to get mechanical work done, it'd have to be to a great degree useful to a person that they would go out looking for another one. You would try to work with them, I think. And I think if we all work together, we can save a tremendous amount of money for the citizens of Charlottetown. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And, Mr. Chair, would all of council be getting this report with all the 13 paragraphs? Because that might solve a lot of issues too, when they can have a chance to read through it and say, okay, I didn't know this, and this is good, and that's,
We would like to submit this for the package for council for Monday night.
That's a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks, Nancy, for the report. Unfortunately, unlike Councillor Duffy, I not quite at the crystal clear stage yet. This is a lot of information to take in, which is, again, very thankful that you put it together. Do need some time to be able to take this back to compare it to all the notes that I've had over the year, because I am one of the ones that have been critical of this deal. I've been one that's been asking for some clarity around this deal. So it appears that that you've brought it forward today. Again, not having the time to be able to go back and compare it to the notes. I'll be prepared for council next Monday to discuss this for sure. I do think that this report not only should be part of the package on Friday, but it should be sent out immediately to councillors, because it is a lot to absorb. And I think to give council fair time to be able to review this. I think this report itself should go out earlier than the other, as opposed to just leaving it for the weekend for councillors to try to get through in the event that they have questions prior to Monday night. Again, I have been critical of this, and again, based on what the lawyer had said during our meeting, rightfully so, because some of the questions weren't answered. I'm hoping this brings some more clarity to it. That way, a proper vote can be made by council. And I'll just leave it at that. So, thank you.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Rivard. I think the sooner we get it, the better, because we make the best decisions, of course, on the best information, and this is very good information. Just small details, like in the past year we had 19 vehicles through this program. 17 of them, 11 of the 17 were done at Fairhouse Ford. The other 6 went to 2 other car dealerships, one in Summerside and one here in Charlottetown, and 2 independent dealers got the balancing 2 vehicles because they were specially adapted. So there's a lot of figures, and there's got a lot of stuff to absorb. I think that's just pretty well it. I think, like I say, it's very valuable information, and I agree with Councillor Rivard that it should go out as soon as possible. to the whole council. Thank you.
Chair, can I just follow up here just for a quick second? I do have a quick question, I guess, to Nancy, just around the fuel cost. And we talked about adjusting it by $300,000 over the 10-year period. And when they came up with that cost or the savings with fuel, they based on what, $1 a liter, is that what you said? Okay, so
Yes.
so am I right by saying that for just for Public Works, just alone, but what would be the total amount spent by the city on fuel per year? I know in Public Works, we have budgeted for this year 450,000. But I know we'd be looking at Park and Rec and other places as well, is that they're going to take advantage of this fleet management. So do we have an idea? Would it be $750,000, $800,000 of fuel costs for the?
And actually, we did an analysis on that for the budgeting, and the number's not coming to me, but I can certainly, I can send that out, that number out to the finance committee.
Yeah, again, when we talk about $1 per liter and we're seeing where gas is going now, I just think, those numbers can be a bit skewed as well on savings. Anyways, if we can get a total budget for our fuel cost per year, because again, this is $300,000 over 10 years of savings. I'd love to know exactly what we got for fuel over 10 years. And, it's hard to project where fuel is going, but it doesn't appear to be heading in the right direction. So again, $1 is pretty, we haven't had $1 gas since, well, I don't think I was driving.
But,
And that's not yesterday.
so that's correct, Councillor, because that's why we took it out of the analysis, because it was not a good number to do an analysis with, because it's so volatile. So this is, when I speak about the 300,000, it's not included in this analysis here.
Right, thank you. And the other question I had is again, when we talk about, budgeting and going forward and the cost of everything being, increasing so much, be it houses, be it whatever. So, is it factored in these numbers, the cost of material, the cost to the manufacturer to build these? These projections are based on basically today's building material, today's rates, today, everything. 10 years from now, as we saw in even the last 2 years. And Councillor Duffy, you talk about this a lot. We can attest to this. Since COVID, prices have gone through the roof on everything. So I think it's, I think to give us a better kind of idea of a long-term picture, projecting some kind of increase over that time to come up with a, proper savings is.
Well, absolutely. However, that said, we would have to apply that same consideration and principle to the maintenance. Right? So if we increase both the same, we can certainly do that. But if we increase both the same, we're not going to be too far away from where, I'm not sure how material the difference would be.
Well, it depends. It depends if again, through a tendering process, when you have competition for services versus that of just one person offering a service, it may be a little different because, again, when you have the tendering process, which has been successful in the past, you have people competing for something. So the whole idea was that to get the best possible rate. When you have more of a monopoly situation, you don't have that luxury as much.
Okay, can you specifically repeat what exactly you're looking for in this analysis, the changes? You want to factor in some kind of inflation for the cost of the vehicles and the cost of maintenance?
Let me ponder, to be fair. Okay. Again, I'll send an email just so I can formulate my thoughts better. These are just kind of, like I said, these are all just coming to me now, and I just want to be able to articulate myself properly. So I'll send an email if I'm looking for more information for council, as opposed to just kind of blurting out a bunch of stuff and making you guys do unnecessary work.
Well, that's deeply appreciated. Thank you.
Okay, and Nancy, I'm just a little confused on like the equity owned and the equity leased. Can we give some sort of example here? We can pick a year and see and just explain to me how that works. And I think, although he didn't touch on it, Councillor Vard makes a good point too. interest rates are rising. Also, I know we have locked in loans with the bank when we purchase these lease agreements. What happens if interest rates go up, and so all these vehicles are going to be leased, and we're going to be making monthly payments on them as opposed to going out and putting them through the capital budget.
No, actually, because this is an open-ended lease, these are capital items.
Okay, so when we talk about the equity owned and the equity leased, is there a way to?
Yes, for sure. So the equity owned, okay, so the equity owned, you can see that we only have that being presented until 2025. That's because at the end of 2025 or before, we don't expect to have any of our previously owned vehicles. So I guess the way to explain this, Mr. Chair, is you see where we have owned vehicles, the fourth column? The equity owned relates to that column, okay? And then we have equity leased and we have leased. So the equity leased relates to the leased column. So when we see a decrease in the owned, we will see an increase in the leased because we are phasing out of the older 61 vehicles we have. And because they're newer vehicles, there's going to be a greater degree of equity. We're not hanging on to them for as long. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I'm just trying to look at the numbers on the owned and the leased, and I can see that we're phasing them out as we move through the process here, and I'm just trying to wrap my head around the equity part of that equation.
And I think the confusion may come from the fact that when we go out and lease a vehicle, it's an entirely different situation on a personal level than what we have here. Typically, when you lease a vehicle, and even if you're a small business or whatever, it's going to be an operating lease, not a capital lease. But that's where these are capital leases. So the equity leased would be the number that's showing on our balance sheet for our ownership in these vehicles until we sell them.
Yeah, so are you done, Chair, with?
You go ahead, Councillor Red. I'm like you. It's a lot of information. I know we just basically got it here, and I agree with Councillor Duffy. I agree with everyone. I guess the earlier we get it out, the better. I'm trying to wrap my head around the information, but go ahead, Councillor Red.
Yeah, and I think that's the tricky part here is that we've received so much information, and like you said, Nancy, it was so fragmented along the way that you're trying to put a puzzle together, and you've struggled for a year and a half trying to put this puzzle together, and all of a sudden, we get presented with potentially the puzzle, but again, without going back and comparing numbers, comparing notes, seeing where maybe there were shortcomings that or concerns that weren't addressed, it's really hard to. It's really hard to say yay or nay at this point. The legal letter that we had, I know in the closed session, is that something that can be part of the package? Is that something that can be shared? Because I know that was taken away because it was closed, but it'd be nice to be able to maybe use some of those notes.
Traditionally, Mr. Chair, we do not circulate legal opinions. And if we do, or as traditionally, this is what we've done. And if we do, we usually just circulate them and then pick them up afterwards. That's a solicitor-client privilege issue.
Sorry, Chair. I'm just trying to. Again, everything's been so fragmented. We've received so much information that it's just nice to be able to try to kind of draw. Well, like kids' placemat that you see in a restaurant, you want to draw the farmer to the hay, and that's what I'm trying to do here. Is yeah.
If it would be helpful, I would be happy to kind of summarize the concerns in the legal letter
Careful on that one. You don't want to. It's a solicitor client privilege that we're protecting.
Even to paraphrase or anything? Okay.
I guess maybe,
that.
I guess maybe Don, and not to put you on the spot, and I can understand what Councillor Vard is saying. So maybe, like, where are we going from here, and what is going to be the process going forward, and maybe that can kind of help us. What do we need, and maybe what, because we were all in the room
Yeah.
when.
Okay, Mr. Chair, you have three options. Your first option is, quite frankly, if you want to defer this matter till your next month, you can do that. And take it back and think about it and come back to it next month. Your other option, one other option is to confirm and ratify, make a recommendation to council to confirm and ratify the August 23rd, 2021 decision regarding enterprise. Or in the third option would be to make a recommendation to council to terminate the contract. But it is important that you will recall that you have to make a recommendation coming out of this committee.
And I can appreciate that, and that's great. And in all fairness to everyone in the room, I think when we went down this road, I think it was back in August, there was people. We had members missing. So, you know, as it was all alluded to, we've kind of kicked this around for a year. It'd be nice to have everybody present, and I know that's not always possible. We're missing obviously a member here this afternoon. I guess I'm just wondering.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
could I suggest?
Oh.
Could I suggest that maybe the information letter go out today or tomorrow sometime, but within it, a little note to the readers or the other counselors at home. What are the issues, so they don't have to have the legal. All they have to do is where did we fail in the past, and what do we have to do to fix it, and delay it a month, and then we could have the people that have the answers. And I'm not saying that Nancy and Donna don't have the answers, but the people that work at it every day. For those who want to attend and read all the data and the figures and answer all the questions and address all the issues, and then have those people in Halifax, for those who wish to attend, to come to an hour and a half session some evening. I know they're few and far between when you're free, but I'd like us to do it thoroughly. So that would be my suggestion is, what do we have to do? And when do we have to have it done? So I would think, so we don't want to be kicking this thing around Christmas Eve. I won't be here Christmas Eve. Thank you.
No, that's. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Ramsey.
No,
Sorry.
okay, thank you, Chair. I would like to sort of defer this for one more month, so then people can't say, I just received the information Thursday and our meeting is Monday, and let them really go over everything and ask all kinds of questions, and then as Councillor Duffy said, maybe we all get in the room and say, here's are the pros, here's are the cons, what's your question, and here's the answer. Because we've been going at this, as we keep saying, for a year and a half. One more month will not break us. So I think it should not go to council Monday, but the information should be put out there for all of council, and they'll have 30 days to sort of review it and write down their questions. Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks, Chair. I don't necessarily disagree with Councillor Ramsey. I don't know if we need a month. I mean, at the end of the month, we have our special meeting at council. If we had the extra, 2 weeks, I think is suffice. To go an extra month is probably a little bit maybe overkill. But I would certainly suggest maybe a 2-week delay just to allow us to ruffle through kind of what we had previously, what we have in front of us today, compare notes, see if there's anything that's remains unclear that we need some clarity to, and then that's kind of where I'm at. So I'm okay deferring, but I wouldn't want to defer for a month. I think to the special meeting at council at the end of the month would be suffice.
Yeah, no, I just said that because if it's our next council meeting, but I forgot about our special committee of council, which would happen in 2 weeks. So that'd be fine with me. Thank you.
I think that I would go for that third Monday of the month and to put as few other things on that agenda. If we come in here with 8 or 9 items and some of them big, we're just going to be back at each other's throats. So I would say no more than three items. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, sorry for my lateness. I was at the announcement for the 60th anniversary of Gold Cup and Saucer Parade, Councillor Duffy, and I'm sure you remember that first parade back
there.
in 62. So very,
I was 12 years old.
I'm 63, so I remember it as a 3-year-old. I just want to say, Mr. Chair, do we put a motion on the floor right now to defer it? I think there's one on. Is it seconded? Okay.
Yeah.
I call the question.
Okay, so all in favor of delaying this for 2 weeks, but deferring this for 2 weeks, sorry, but with the information going to all council, this afternoon?
As soon as possible. Maybe tomorrow if there's going to be a list of issues and questions, maybe tomorrow.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, if I could add, that fourth Monday in June, there will be 1 or 2 items. This will be top priority. The enterprise fleet management. Thank you.
Like the gas prices, you say that now. Until a week before we get 10 items. So keep it to 3.
Donna will make sure we keep it to
Thank
2
you.
or 3.
Okay, that's great. Committee, thank you very much. Was there any new business before we move into the closed portion of the meeting? No, I didn't hear any. Okay, so I just need a motion to move into closed session as per section 119.1 subsection E. It's moved and it's seconded. Okay, so with that said, we'll move into a closed session. Thank you very much.